What is going on, everybody? It's Sean here, and welcome to episode 4 of the Channel 8 podcast. So today's episode is going to be a little bit more about storytelling, and I'll get into the details of it later on, but basically I want to share with you guys some of my experiences that I've had camping out for shoes, which is something I gotta say I really hate doing. Before we do that though, let's kick off the podcast talking about my pickups for the week. So this week has been a pretty light week. So the first shoe I got was the Todd Snyder collaboration with New Balance on the 992. This is that tan looking pair with the duck camel print underneath, and it was a pretty big disaster how they released the shoe. So it was supposed to drop, I believe, at 11 a.m. on their website, and these were a Todd Snyder exclusive, so if you wanted a pair, you had to get them from this site. And I'm not exactly sure what happened, but the word on the street is that they had an early link that was released for VIPs and other people like that, and then somehow I think that link got leaked. So the link went live, I believe, around 10:43 a.m., and the shoe sold out just a couple minutes later. So keep in mind, the release for the shoe was set for 11 a.m. This is what they've been promoting. This is what they've been saying on their Instagram and all that stuff. So by the time 11 a.m. rolled around and the average Joe was able to access the link, as you'd expect, everything loaded as sold out. So people were going in on Todd Snyder on the Instagram. They were complaining. They were really upset. And then it got to the point where Todd Snyder issued an apology on a follow-up post, which was actually a very nice thing to do. I mean, they have zero obligation to do that. And you can tell that Todd Snyder himself, he's a pretty caring guy, and he seemed to be at least genuinely impacted by the people's reactions. So we'll see how the next Todd Snyder New Balance collab goes. If it's not a 992, which is super popular these days, probably it's not going to sell out right away. So I know the 997s that released a few months back, those ones sat around for a few hours. But it's interesting to see these platforms that aren't used to shoes selling out this fast. It's interesting at least to see how they handle it. Anyways, long story short, so I took an L on that, but I'm part of Soul Savvy. But another member in Soul Savvy managed to check out my size, so he ooped them to me for retail. So shout out to Ben if you're listening to this. The next pair I got was courtesy of the family from Foot Locker Canada. This is part of their Steppin' Strong campaign for the Lunar New Year, and they sent me the Converse Chuck 70 in the Year of the Ox colorway. This is the one that has that patchwork effect to it, and I thought it was super clean, and I actually really liked it. The problem is, I'm a true size 10, and Foot Locker Canada sent me also a size 10, and if you know for Chuck Taylors, they fit huge. I'm normally a 9 or a 9.5 in Chuck Taylor, so there was no way I was fitting in these ones, which is too bad because, it's a pretty dope shoe, and it's something I wouldn't have mind wearing, but I guess silver lining, it's still made for a pretty dope photo, so at least I still got that out of it. The next pair I got was from the Adidas Canada family, and they sent me a new pair of the Ultra Boost 21. So this is the white, black, and like the neon or solar yellow colorway. And it's going to be my first pair of Ultra Boost since that NASA collaboration, I think that released a couple years ago or so. Anyways, the Ultra Boost 21 has a brand new design. The Boost midsole is super, super chunky. I don't know if you guys seen pictures of it yet or not, but it looks completely redesigned from the traditional Ultra Boost that we're used to. So I can't wait to try those on. They look super comfy. So big thank you to Adidas Canada. And the last pair I got for the week is the Air Jordan 3 Cool Gray. These dropped this past Saturday and it was a pretty easy cop. I guess Jordan Brand made these like a GR, so there's tons of pairs going around. And if you were into Jordans in the mid to late 2000s, more likely than not, you probably picked up a pair of these Cool Gray 3s. Me personally, I love the Air Jordan 3 model, so this was a definite cop for me. And I know some people pass on these because they were just too easy to get. There was not enough hype surrounding it and all that stuff, but who cares about that? It's a super dope shoe. I love the Jordan 3, so I'm very happy I was able to grab these. For what I've been wearing the past week, so I broke out the off-white Nike Dunk in the University Red or UNLV colorway. For what everyone's been telling me, the UNLV Dunks that dropped last week, the quality on those just aren't that good. So I entered all the raffles I could, but I took L's, so whatever, it's not that big of a deal. I guess it makes taking L's on those a bit easier to digest, and since I have the off-white version, I don't really need the 2021 version, and it more or less looks the same on feet. I also wore the Stussy Nike SB Cherries, and luck would have it, when I decided to wear them, of course I didn't check the weather, and it ended up being like a huge snowstorm that day. So if you saw my picture on Instagram, I took that just when the snow was starting, but by the time I eventually made it home, there was a ton of snow on the ground. Luckily, the Dunks were okay, but take that as a lesson to always check the weather, especially in the wintertime in Toronto. The next shoe I wore was the Air Jordan 12 in the Bread or Flu Game colorway. So you see, I learned from wearing the Stussy Dunks the day before, and I know because I had to go out, I had to wear a shoe that's going to be a tank. And the Jordan 12, the ones that are done in leather, those are it. These guys can definitely take a beating, whether it's rain, whether it's snow, mud, all that stuff. The Jordan 12s are absolute tanks. And it's one of those shoes I can wear in any weather without having to worry about them. And the last shoe I wore is the Notre Nike Dunk High in the light Orwood brown colorway. So I got both colorways of the Notre Dunks, but they finally got delivered to my place. And I posted up the review yesterday. If you haven't seen it yet, it's on my YouTube channel. Anyways, both colorways are beautiful. They're really, really nice. So I decided to undead stock the light Orwood pair. And honestly, they might even be nicer on feet than they look on the shelf. So kudos to Notre and Nike for doing a killer job on this collab. So let's move on to the main segment of today's episode, and I'm going to talk about my experiences with camping out. So I'll be honest with you guys, camping out sucks. It's really something I try to avoid doing at all costs. You know, if it's a decision between camping out overnight versus, say, paying resale for, $50 over retail, I'd definitely rather pay the resale price. Because, for me, time is money, and I love my sleep, and I have a lot better things I can do with my time rather than just lining up in front of a store for hours and hours. But, sometimes when the resale prices on the shoe are just crazy, or if it seems like I have a pretty good shot at getting the shoe without lining up for too long, or any combination of the two, then in the past, I have camped out. So my very first experience with camping out was for the Air Jordan 23 in the titanium colorway. So for those that don't know, so the Air Jordan 23, the first colorway that released, I believe, correct me if I'm wrong, but I'm pretty sure it was the titanium colorway. And the special thing about this release was, so in the US, only 23 retailers were given the shoes, and each of those 23 retailers were given 23 pairs. So the US versions, these were individually numbered from 1 to 529, which is 23 times 23. And then outside of the US, around the rest of the world, 23 other shops were given the shoes, also given 23 pairs, but our versions weren't numbered. So in the Toronto area, I think there was only 2 shops that got these titaniums. Goodfoot, which was a boutique located downtown, just around the corner from Livestock, and then there was also The Vault, which was sort of like an offshoot of another one of our discount retailers, S'il vous plaît. So The Vault was more like a boutique style, so they're gone now, but when they were around, they actually got like the latest drops and all that stuff. So I don't know how Nike Canada or Jordan decided to give the Vault pairs of all places, but they somehow did. So this was still in the very early days when I was buying shoes, and myself, one of my best friends, Miggy, his then girlfriend, and another friend of mine, we decided to make our way up to Vaughan, which is just north of Toronto, and take our luck lining up for these shoes. So this was January of 2008, and January in the Toronto area, to simply put it, is cold. So I think we made our way there, I want to say, just after lunchtime, I think. And by the time we got there, there was a good amount of people sitting outside on lawn chairs right outside the entrance. So we took our spot in line, and it was just a waiting game after that point. The good thing about it was the people in line with us, they were very courteous, they were very friendly. Everyone was just kind of talking to each other. And because it was so cold, we respected everyone's place in line. We were able to sit back in our cars, turn on the engines, warm up a bit before going back outside. So it wasn't like a lot of the lineups we see today. There weren't any pushing, there wasn't any beef, no fighting, nothing like that. Very civil, and overall it's a pretty good experience. So we waited from around just after lunch the day before, and the shoes were set to drop the following day, and the store would probably open at around 11 a.m. So all in, I think we probably waited around 20 hours or so. So it was just a battle of trying to pass time, whether that's just talking to people, trying to catch some sleep in our car, or even playing like silly car games that you would normally do when you're on a road trip. So the next day rolls around and it's 11 a.m. and one by one they start letting people in. And keep in mind, we definitely did a head count when we lined up. And our thought was that there was going to be 23 pairs available because that's what Jordan Brand was advertising. And based off of that logic, we were definitely within the first 23 people. But yeah, so they one by one started cashing people out. People started picking out their sizes, paying, and we'd see them leaving with the store bags. We were super excited, super eager for our chance to pick our pairs. And then lo and behold, right after the guy in front of me goes in and cashes out, the store manager comes out and he talks to me and he says, pretty much, look, we're sold out. We had 23 pairs, but we had to allocate a couple to employees and stuff like that. So unfortunately, we don't have any for you. Yeah, so that silence was pretty much our reaction. Keep in mind, this was my very first time camping out. So, I mean, we were speechless. But I think he had either seen like the sadness in our eyes, or he had known that we had camped out overnight. And all of a sudden he goes, "You know what? What size are you?" And I tell him I'm a size 10. And he says, "You can take my pair." So the manager of that store gave up his own pair of the titanium 23s so that I could have it. Pretty crazy, huh? It's this sort of selflessness you don't really see too much in the community these days. And I think that really just made that whole experience that much sweeter. So honestly, for a first time campout experience, that was a pretty good experience. I ended up with the shoes I wanted, and plus, I got a really good story to tell out of it. Fast forward to 2013. So this was another memorable campout experience. This was for the Air Jordan 1 Royals from 2013. So these released in February of that year. And back then, Jordans were still being sold at Today's Sportswear. So for those that don't know, it's pretty much like a Chinese run discount sneaker goods store. I guess that's one way to put it. But for some reason, for the longest time, they actually had a Jordan account. So I remember they used to have like the Jordan countdown packs, and some of those packs, the ones that weren't as popular, they went on massive clearance at the time. So long story short, Today's Sportswear, among all the bricks they were selling and all that stuff, they actually got legitimate Jordans. And it wasn't that popular, like not too many people knew about it. So myself, my friend Miggy again, and my then girlfriend at the time, we decided to camp out for the Royal Ones. So we hit up the Today's Sportswear location, which was just outside Pacific Mall, which is just north of Toronto. It's this massive barn-looking Asian mall, and on the outside, connected to the mall, there's Today's Sportswear. So the three of us pulled up at the store probably around just after midnight, and to our surprise, there was absolutely no one there. This is probably something unheard of in today's era. You're not going to find a hyped Jordan that's going to have no one camping out for the shoe the day before. But 2013 was a different time, so we rolled up with our cars parked right in front of the store entrance and literally just sat there for a few hours until the next group of people showed up. So I think the next wave of people probably showed up at around 3:30 a.m. and I think the store opened probably at noon the next day. So when the next group of guys rolled in, we took out our lawn chairs and we put our places in line. Again, it was a very courteous, very friendly lineup. I actually knew a few of the guys that were lining up too. So shout out to Stan and shout out to Two First Names on IG. And again, this being February, it was freezing cold. So we took turns kind of rotating, sitting in our cars to warm up. And then after what felt like an eternity, the store finally opened. Me, my ex-girlfriend, and Miggy, we all were able to roll in, get our sizes, cash out, and then go home. So fast forward to December of that year, similar to the Royal Ones releasing, they also dropped the bread ones as well. So this story is pretty much identical to the Royal story, except we still went to Today's Sportswear, but instead of the Pacific Mall location, which was further north. By that point, I was living downtown already, so me, Miggy, and another friend of ours, Joseph, we decided to camp out at the downtown location, which was located at Wellesley and Church. So we must have lined up around the same time. So this was around maybe 11 p.m. the night before. And if you're seeing a trend, yes, it was December, and yes, it was also freezing cold. For some reason, all the campouts, for the most part, seem to happen when it's really nasty outside, which definitely makes the experience a lot tougher. But I think at the same time, it deters a lot of people that would have lined up if it was nice outside too. So this was a pretty standard campout. We had our lawn chairs, we had our blankets, we were totally bundled up. So one of the interesting things about this location was, so right next to the Today's Sportswear store, there was a solid black door. There's no signs, nothing that would indicate it's any sort of type of business. But throughout the entire night, we'd see random people going in, and then say an hour later, they'd come out, and then someone else would go inside, and then half an hour later, they'd come out. And keep in mind, this was like at 2 a.m., 3 a.m., 4 a.m. at the night, and there was no signs on the doors. So we had no idea what was going down in there. But it's just one of those things where they kind of give us the look, we give them that head nod, they'd nod to us back, and they would go on with their business. So the next morning, we ended up with our breads. And aside from being a little bit frostbitten, that experience was pretty solid too. In 2015, me and a bunch of my friends lined up for the UNC Jordan 1s. So by this point in time, reselling had become much more of a thing, and Jordan 1s were getting more and more popular. So for these UNC 1s, we decided to hit up Community 54, which is a small boutique located just on the west end of downtown Toronto. So this was October of 2015. We rolled up the morning of, and there was a small but decent sized line just outside the store, but we decided to take our chances and take our place in line. So by the time the store opened, the guy had pretty much come out and said that they had limited stock of the UNC one. And then lo and behold, the people in front of us, they pretty much give the signal, and then family members, I kid you not, family members come out from their car and take their place in line with them. So we're like, whoa, like what? Wait, what? Legitimately, dads, moms, grandmas decided to join the line to buy up more pairs of these shoes. And the funny thing was, one of the moms, she had no idea what the son wanted her to buy. So the Community 54 store owner was asking her, like, which shoe do you want to get? They had either the UNC one, but they also had the Royal One Lows, which released a few days before. So we're standing there in disbelief, knowing that our chances to grab these shoes are slim to none now. And meanwhile, that guy in front of us is telling his mom, no, mom, not the Royal One Lows, get the UNC One Highs. But it's kind of funny now to see how the Royal One Lows have also skyrocketed in price. So looking back now, it probably wouldn't have been a bad idea for me to settle for that pair instead of just walking home empty-handed. But eventually I was able to line up elsewhere and grab a pair of UNC ones. But experiencing firsthand a bunch of line cutters, but not only that, a bunch of family members, moms, dads, and grandmas cut us in line, that was definitely a bad experience. Later on that year, in December of 2015, Nike released the Air Max 1 The 6. So this was a Toronto-related design, and at the time it was only released, I believe, in Toronto. So this is the pair that's pretty much all white and black, and the whole bottom of the shoe is white, even the air bubble itself is whited over. And of course, being born and raised in Toronto, this was a very important shoe for me. This was an Air Max 1 that was representing the city I grew up in. So I think a few of our boutiques like Exclusivity and Livestock, they were releasing these shoes, but in pretty limited numbers. But we got intel that the Nike store in the Eaton Center, which is one of our biggest malls in the city, they were going to be releasing a good amount of pairs. So myself, Lawrence, aka L Doggy Styles from Canada Got Soul, and another friend of ours, Jay, we decided to camp out together for these shoes. So we showed up at the Eaton Center, I think it was around 10 o'clock the night before. I think it was set for a 10 a.m. release the next day, something around that. And by the time we showed up at the Eaton Center, there was probably around 20 to 30 people deep. We honestly weren't worried though, because we knew that the Nike store in the mall had hundreds of pairs. So it was just a matter of toughing up the cold because we knew we were guaranteed our size. So this Campout brought out a lot of OG sneakerheads in our city, and it's through this lineup that I was able to meet a lot of people that I still keep in contact today. Honestly, the sneaker scene in Toronto, while it's big, it's still a pretty tight-knit community, and for the most part, everyone pretty much knows everybody. So we waited outside throughout the night. Myself, Lawrence, and Jay, we hit up, I think it was a McDonald's or a Timmy's at some point during the night. And then around 6 a.m. the next day, the security guards finally opened the doors to the mall, and we were able to line up indoors. So around that 6:37 a.m. mark, that's when a ton of people started showing up. And eventually they had to snake the line around the mall, but there was still a ton of pairs available. So I was able to grab my pair, and then I ran into another friend of mine, Richie, who was the guest on the previous episode of the Channel 8 podcast. Shout out to Rich 3D. And after he cashed out his pair, he lined up again and was able to get me my second pair. So fast forward to 2018, there was a couple pretty memorable lineups at the 306 Yonge store, which is our former Jordan store in downtown Toronto. So do you guys remember the Justin Timberlake Jordan 3s? So these are the ones that look like white cement 3s, but they have the swoosh on the side and they have Justin Timberlake's signature on the inside tongue. So those originally released on the Sneakers app during the Super Bowl, but then they were eventually released in different cities following Justin Timberlake's tour. So his first stop, which was in Toronto, this was in March of 2018, and Justin Timberlake was actually in the store for the release. So these shoes were set to release at 6:23 p.m., but keep in mind there was no official release details about this shoe. It was technically supposed to be a quote-unquote surprise, but word got out, I believe, the morning of or maybe the night before that these were set to release. So I decided to pay a visit to 306 Yonge, and when I went in that morning, well, it seemed kind of like business as usual. I did notice that there were these big security guards that were getting ready, and they were putting these metal stanchions just outside the store. So I knew at that point, okay, something is definitely going on. I asked one of the employees if the rumor was true, and they were actually releasing the Justin Timberlake shoes. And he said, pretty much, he couldn't tell me anything, but stay tuned. So I didn't want to wait around forever because no one else was really there. I didn't want to be the only guy just standing in front of the door. So I decided to leave for a few hours, but I'm pretty sure the Foot Action Toronto Instagram, one of those accounts, they posted that, hey, these shoes are coming and it's first come, first serve at the Jordan store. Luckily, I was close by to 306 Young, so I was probably the 50th or 60th person in line. So I knew I was good. Again, just a matter of toughing out the crowd and waiting the 6 hours or so until 6:23. The dope thing about this too was I believe the first 10 or so people in line, they actually got their boxes signed by Justin Timberlake, which was really, really dope. And I guess looking back, it probably would have made sense if I just stand in line first. But at the end of the day, I still got the shoes, which is really what I wanted. And it was pretty cool seeing Justin Timberlake 20, 30 feet away too. A few months later, in June of 2018, 306 Young would release the Travis Scott Jordan 4s. So usually for hyped Jordans, Foot Locker or whatever company, most of the time they do raffles. And this makes sense for the most part because usually stock levels aren't that high and they don't want to get people in danger. But for some reason, for these Travis Scott Jordan 4s, they decided to do first come, first serve. So this is amazing if you're a reseller, if you always go out with friends and you can hire people to line up with you. But for someone like me who's just your regular Joe, I just want my one personal pair in my size 10 or size 10 and a half. So we knew leading up to this release, Travis Scott 4s, the hype was going to be crazy. So myself and Lawrence, again, L Doggy Styles, we decided to line up together along with Mare, aka Hardy Girl, on Instagram, along with Lays, aka Lazy Bones. So I'm pretty sure we all lined up together starting around, I think I want to say around like 1 a.m. or so. So at that point in time, the line was pretty orderly, I'll be honest. For the most part, it was around 3 people wide, and we were all contained within metal stanchions. So if you can imagine the line, it kind of goes wider at the back and then it funnels in almost to single file at the very front. So we waited in line for around 8-9 hours or so, but when the store was getting ready to open, for some inexplicable reason, the security guards working the store, these fools started to remove the metal stanchions. I don't know why they were doing this. I don't know what purpose that would achieve, but that's what they did. And as you'd expect, when there's nothing to contain the line, it pretty much became a free-for-all dash to the front. So this lineup, which was at one point funneling in very orderly into a single file entrance, after the stanchions were removed, it became this massive, super wide blob. So everyone was just shoving their way to the front, cutting around the sides as much as they could. So we went from, say, the 100th person in line, we were just getting pushed back and back and back and being overtaken from people in the back of the line who were just cutting through the sides. So we had gotten word that there was X number of pairs. I don't remember how many pairs they had, but we were keeping like a mental checklist of how many people we think were cutting in front of us. And let's just say it was getting close. So at that point, we pretty much had all gotten separated. I was pretty much on my own. And that's when I said, okay, I got to put my foot down. Simply put, if I don't start getting aggressive and pushing my way to the front, there might be a chance that I lined up for 8-9 hours for nothing. So that's what I did. And it sucks to say this because it's not fair to the people that I overtook. But whenever the people in charge decide to cause chaos, I feel like you just got to move with the times or you're going to be left behind. So by the time I got to the front, they were asking for my size. I'm pretty sure I got one of like the last 3 pairs of the 10 and a halves. So that just shows you how close I was to not getting my pair. I still would have been guaranteed a size, but just having to go through that hassle of trading or selling that pair in order to buy my size would have been this additional hassle that I didn't need. So I'm pretty sure after that experience, that was the very last time I ever lined up for a super hype sneaker. The last experience I want to share with you guys isn't for a shoe. So this was for the October's very own collaboration with the Raptors when they released their championship apparel in June of 2019. So if you guys know me, you know I'm a huge Toronto Raptors fan since the beginning, since 1995. And seeing them win their NBA title in 2019 was something I honestly never expected I'd see in my lifetime. It was a dream season, it was honestly unreal. Being able to walk the city after they won the title, that was one of those experiences and one of those memories you'll hold forever. So safe to say, when Drake announced that they're releasing this OVO Toronto Raptors collab, this was something I was definitely down to line up for. So I've never had to camp out overnight for clothes, but at the time I didn't know how limited it was going to be. I didn't know how expensive resale was going to be. And I figured with merch, there'd be a lot more pieces than shoes. So me and my friend Miggy again, we decided to camp out. So this is outside the Scotiabank Arena, which is where the Raptors play, and this is in downtown Toronto. So I think we showed up the night before around 11:30 or 12. We had our lawn chairs, and luckily it was June, so the weather was nice. We didn't have to bundle up, we didn't have to worry about frostbites or anything like that. We had our external chargers, we had snacks. We expected it to be a long, but overall, we expected a pleasant lineup experience. And for the first few hours, it was fine. We were talking to the people around us. We were playing games on our phones. We were talking about our favorite moments during the playoff run. So I had to use the washroom. So I decided to walk up, I believe it was Bay Street, to find like a Tim Hortons to use the washroom. So here's me taking my time. I used the washroom, decided to browse the menu, see if I wanted anything. Didn't want anything, so I ended up walking back down to the Scotiabank Arena. As I'm making my way closer to the Scotiabank Arena, I start passing the people at the very back of the line, and then out of nowhere, I start seeing people run. So I have no idea what's happening. Up to that point, it was a very peaceful, very organized lineup. And even before that, there was unofficial people in line who were organizing the line, keeping a track of names and all that stuff. So I had thought everything was going to be fine and orderly. So the story I heard was that someone or some people just decided to rush to the front of the line, which caused like a copycat effect. Everyone started panicking, and then this once orderly line became this mass of people right in front of the doors. So I decided to book it. I ran as fast as I could, and gotta give kudos to Miggy, man. This guy took both our lawn chairs, both our backpacks, all the snacks and everything we were carrying. He carried it all himself, and he made a run for it as well. So we were separated at first, but eventually we made our way back together. But by that point, there was no order. Some of us tried forming a line on the right side of the doors. Some people started trying to form a line on the left. And then there was people trying to form a line down the middle. So safe to say, it was a nightmare. After what felt like hours of just sardines of people just pushing each other, figuring out what's happening, eventually Scotiabank Arena staff showed up and they started to let us in one by one and form a snake line inside. So we went from probably the 80th spot in line, we got overtaken by a few hundred people. So now we were way back from where we originally were. And for some reason, the checkout process at the store was super, super slow. So we thought camping out outside, waiting in this mosh pit of people for hours, and now that we were finally inside, we thought, hey, we made it into the clear. But this lineup inside the arena would take another few hours on top of that. So the combination of all those factors going from the highest of highs to mass panic, and then now having to wait another few hours inside the arena, this all made it definitely the most stressful and the most chaotic lineup I've ever been in. Luckily, because this was apparel and it was mass produced, we were both able to get what we wanted. But the stupid thing is, well, it's actually not bad for everyone else, but for us and for everyone else that lined up, they eventually released more of this apparel to the public. So it turned out we didn't really need to line up for this anyways. So I don't know, I guess telling it in story form, it doesn't really sound as bad as it really was. But after that, I told myself, no more camping out. And that's probably going to be a lie because I'm sure down the line, Nike, Jordan, or someone's going to release some stupid limited shoe. And I'm going to tell myself I'm going to have a chance if I just line up overnight. But I feel like the older I'm getting, as my priorities shift, and the fact that I'm just more comfortable financially than I was when I first started collecting shoes, it's something I really try to avoid at all costs. So let me know if you guys have had any crazy experiences camping out for shoes, for clothes, or anything like that. I know some people line up for like Black Friday or for Boxing Day. I know there's a lot of electronic deals and stuff like that. That's something I never really got into, but I'm sure there's crazy stories for that too. So that pretty much wraps up episode 4 of the Channel 8 podcast. Hopefully you guys enjoyed listening to some of my stories. I wouldn't be surprised if I'm forgetting something. There's probably some other crazy story that I'm just not remembering. But yeah, so hopefully you guys enjoyed listening. If you guys could leave a review, that'd be great. Give it that 5-star rating. It would definitely go a long way for the channel. So the Channel 8 podcast is available on various platforms like Spotify, iTunes, Podbean, and my website as well, seango.ca. And if you want to follow me on Instagram, my Instagram account is esco8. My YouTube channel is youtube.com/seango. And you can find me on Twitter at sean.go spelt out. So thank you guys so much for the love and support. Thank you for listening. And I'll catch you guys all in my next episode.